Hello, welcome back to another video. Got Jason Murphy with me again today. We're going to be reviewing Tank versus Frank Martin that happened in Las Vegas last night. How are we, Jason?
I'm good, brother. You?
Yeah, really well. Thanks, mate. Tired as always from the Vegas shows. It makes a bit of a change from the Saudi boxing we've been used to lately, but we're UFC fans as well, so we're used to staying up in the middle of the night. But
That's
here
it.
we are.
My Saturday nights are spent in front of the TV trying to stop myself falling asleep.
That's it, 100%. So Tank stopped Frank Martin in the 8th round, one punch KO. Interesting fight up until that point. The judges had Tank, all three unanimously had him 1 point ahead through 7 rounds, which I think were probably fair cards. It was definitely close at the time.
Yeah.
The tide was turning definitely in round 7, wasn't it? Martin was sat on the ropes a little bit. And then obviously, absolutely beautiful finish, for tanking, especially at lightweight, having that equalizer, that one punch knockout shot, just seems to get him out every single time, doesn't it?
Scary the way that he sort of, similar to Terence Crawford, it's like he sort of boxes, moves around, he's sort of comfortable, and then he just switches, and it's like he turns his power up, like he's got a power bar, and he just turns it up. Similar to when Crawford was sort of going tit for tat with Sean Porter, and then when he realised they were losing, he clapped him.
Bomac read in the riot act, didn't he? Said you're losing, you're behind. There's been a lot of talk about corner work recently, hasn't there? In boxing with Fury's corner, so on and so forth. Bomac, he didn't, he was straight on Crawford. You are losing this fight, and then went out and stopped him, didn't he?
Yeah, but up to that point, I had Tank winning, but it wasn't an easy night's work for him. Martin gave a good account of himself. He's probably gained some more fans. I'll certainly watch his comeback fight just to see how far he can go.
For sure.
At 135. Tank, I wouldn't say he struggled. He was comfortable, but it was close up to the point of he sort of caught him with an uppercut that stunned him. But I was surprised that Martin was sitting on the ropes. I don't know whether he was tired. He seemed to sort of trap himself.
He did.
He didn't look to get out. He didn't look to turn him, or he wasn't looking for space to get. He just sat there.
He fought a great fight, didn't he, for the first 6 rounds, and then that 7th round was like the beginning of the end in hindsight, almost. Sat on the ropes the whole time. He actually caught Tank with a beautiful counter left hand, maybe in like the last 45-30 seconds of round 7. But Tank was really on top at that point, and then he just sort of carried that form on into the 8th round. And it was an absolutely beautiful finish, to be honest. It wasn't no count required really.
He was asleep with his eyes open. If you watch it, I've watched it a few times, sort of in slow motion. He catches him, and you can see Martin's body just sort of
equilibrium just gone.
Do you remember when Kovalev hit Nathan Cleverly?
I do.
Colour drain, the colour drained out of him, and he just lost all his faculties and just was wide open. It was very similar with Martin. He sort of got stunned, and he just stayed there, hands down, stayed there, and obviously it was an unblocked shot that just put him straight out, eyes wide open on his back. Like you say, no count necessary. Tank was on the rope celebrating, did his
he was. He knew, didn't he? He felt that one straight out the blocks. He knew that, you're not getting up from that one.
Tank hits super hard when you're ready for it. I think I've listened to Martin's sort of post-fight interview afterwards, and he said, look, I just didn't see it coming. You can't prepare yourself for those kind of shots. It just shut him off. But up to that point, he will give any of the top 10 at 135 trouble.
Oh, for sure. He
eventually beat a lot of them.
Yeah, he had moments for sure. There was a lot of talk of him being weight drained. He didn't look the best on the scales on Friday, Frank Martin, but he did look very dry. I don't know if the gap, he put a lot of effort into those first 6 or 7 rounds to, it was competitive. It was close. Tank was probably just slightly ahead, but he was in that fight. But, maybe a similar case to, Bellew and Usyk when he was kind of in the fight, but he put so much into those rounds to be in the fight. And then maybe round 7 and round 8, it just became too much for him.
Yeah, I think Tank showed that he was just that little bit better. So he was edging every round, but I think he had a couple of levels left.
Yeah, he was in second gear. Frank Martin was in fourth or fifth gear.
It took everything Martin had just to get to that point. So I think, irrespective of him getting caught with that uppercut, it was the beginning of the end. Once he wasn't trying to get out of those corners, or he possibly couldn't get out of the corners, but for whatever reason, I don't think he had much left. I think it was, inevitable that Tank would have just put a beating on him had he not knocked him out.
I think there's a variable in there as well, Jason. Tank hadn't fought since, I think it was around about April 2023. It's not a massive stint out, 15 months. But he's been, obviously had issues outside the ring and stuff like that. So maybe the first few rounds he was blowing off a couple of cobwebs.
Yeah, and also Frank Martin's dangerous. Hits really hard. We've seen Tank sort of hit hard before. We've never seen him stunned. And I think, he's got ring rust in activity. And I think he just wanted to find his way into the fight. He's not necessarily known as a fast starter anyway. He normally, goes out there, as a lot of the elite fighters do, and they'll sort of see what their opponent's got to offer. They'll find his range, look to find his timing and gaps. And let's be real, he's fighting an elite world-class fighter. Whether a majority of the boxing fans have heard of Frank Martin or not, I can tell you now that kid is good. He's an elite world-level fighter, and you've got to watch your P's and Q's. I don't care who you are. You don't see it coming, you're going to sleep. And Tank's not a machine. He is just a human being. So I think he showed last night that he has actually got an IQ as well. He's not just this marauding one-punch knockout artist.
Yes, definitely.
Tank can box. He can box. And to say he's short and small and his reach is not necessarily long, he finds space and angles with sort of feints. He does like a fast twitch feint.
His pressure's really intelligent, isn't it?
Sits on the chest. It's weird. He sort of follows you around and he's sat on the chest without actually being in the pocket. Just slight little subtle movements with his footwork. He's in and out of range quick. I really appreciated what he did last night. I think it was a top-class performance from Tank.
It really was.
Everyone's going to give him his flowers for the KO. But for me, the build-up to that, he boxed really well. Really, really well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, fantastic performance. Got the rubber stamp at the end, and hopefully we see him out a bit more often than what we have. To be fair, because being honest, he is, arguably the biggest name in America, maybe outside of Canelo at the moment, Crawford as well, I guess. But he is right up there with the marquee fighters right now in the US.
He is, and like you said, marquee fighters need marquee fights. Mm-hmm. We've got to get him in front of somebody now. No disrespect to Frank Martin. I'm going to comment this out. He is
two names,
fighter, but he's not a household name. Mm-hmm. We need a Lomachenko, even a Kambosos, Teofimo Lopez. I know Lopez is, toying around at 140 and stuff.
Shakur's the fight I want to see. Shakur Stevenson, unification at 135 pounds. That's the fight I really want to see. It would be just clash of styles, Bull versus Matador kind of fight. I would favour Tank in that one, if I'm being honest, but I think it'd be a cracking fight. I know, and there's a good bit of divide on that as well. A lot of people think Shakur will be able to outbox Tank. It'd be like you say, it'd be an absolutely cracking fight. I don't think we see it next. I think we're more chance of seeing Lomachenko versus Tank next.
I think they're building both up to make it this massive. I think that fight will happen in Saudi. I think the Saudis, Turkey will put the money up.
Yeah,
he's in with PBC now. I think they are negotiating a takeover.
They are.
For me, I think that they're going to build them up, maybe a fight or two more each, get all the belts, and then I think we'll see a massive bill in Saudi, maybe on a Joshua Fury undercard if that fight ever happens. Or I think he's going to put some massive show on next year that has sort of a load of marquee fights all on one card. I'm excited for that fight though.
Yeah,
I'd like to see if Shakur can take a smack like that. Whether he can actually keep his composure after getting smacked by Tank. I think Tank, we've got to admit, is the hardest hitting at lightweight there is. I can't see anybody else with any power anywhere close to what he's got.
No, he might be the hardest hitter at 140 pounds if he's fighting there too.
Yeah.
Maybe bar Matthias, but he didn't perform too well last night. So yeah, I spoke to somebody on Twitter last night, Dan the Boxing Man, if I remember it, to shout out Dan the Boxing Man. He responded to one of my tweets and he said, how about we see Shakur versus Branchik, who just beat Navarrete. So he holds the is it the WBO? I think he holds, if I'm right. Then obviously you have Loma, who's IBF champion, Tank WBA, and Shakur's WBC. So can we see Shakur Stevenson versus Branchik, and then Tank versus Loma, and then we'll do the winners, which I thought was, it's not necessarily as easy as that, but I thought that was a good point. That would be something that would make complete sense.
Semi-final. Yeah, I mean, it's there. The fights are there. It's can we make them? Hence why I said I think Turkey's the man. I think the fact that he's been pulling these fights together has sort of given some of the organisations and promoters sort of a kick up the backside that they need to start making these fights, because if you don't make them, somebody else will. The Saudis have got the money to buy out contracts and just take them over there. So I think the fact that the semi-finals have sort of made themselves, they've got to start negotiating and making these fights. It's what the fans want. It's what the fans deserve. The fighters deserve it. If you are heralded as the best, then prove it. You've got to fight the other belt holders and have one sort of unified champion.
Mm-hmm. We're seeing it in every other division now. With Turkey's involvement and all the rest of it, we're coming to a point now where there's nowhere to run, nowhere to hide. The best are going to be fighting the best. It's happening already, but it's going to be at a point very, very soon. I think that, there is no, lowballing people or, I'll only fight him for 200 million or do this or do that. You're going to be fighting this guy, and that's the fight to make.
Yeah. It's the next 12 months is going to be, I think, one of the best years we've had for a long time in terms of making sort of unification fights, champ versus number one fights. Turkey's a boxing fan, and he speaks from a fan's perspective, but he's got the money to make shit happen, basically. And I'd like to, ultimately, I want to see Tank and Shakur. I think they're the best two. I know we've got other champions, but I think they're just keeping the belts warm for either of those two. And I think until we see those two box each other, we'll forever be saying, he's the best, he's the best. I think maybe not next, as we said, but certainly within 2 or 3 fights, those kids, if they don't get beat, which I don't see it. I don't see anyone out there unless one of them underestimates somebody and gets caught. I don't think either of those would take their eye off the ball. Shakur's an elite amateur. He's been to the Olympics and stuff, and Tank has been up there from amateur, around Mayweather's and stuff. So he knows what it takes to prepare yourself and maintain yourself at that level. I don't see anybody beating him, so I just want to see it on within the next 1 to 2 fights. I think we'll get that.
Million percent. So yeah, that'll wrap it up. Tank versus Martin reaction. Lots to ponder on. Good to see Gervonta Davis. One of the biggest stars of the sport. Back in action, back to winning. By huge knockouts. Ryan Garcia was on the apron again, but I'm not really interested in seeing that.
Sick of seeing the kid. He's just. Did you see it just before we go? But he had a bit of a do with Caleb Plant.
Yeah, I did see that. Yeah, he needs to. Somebody around him needs to.
Do you know what does it for me? The kid says some good things. He wants to help the children. He wants to help with poverty, and then he starts saying some diabolical stuff about Caleb Plant's wife. And the lad's a dad. He's a father. He's an inspiration to kids that have come from nothing. And then he just spouts this nonsense. The kid could cause an argument in an empty room.
Yeah,
it needs a bit of help. It needs a bit of guidance, But yeah,
he shouldn't be fighting right now. He shouldn't be, at these boxing events causing ruckuses. He needs to just go away, get himself right. He's an amazing talent. He's going to be involved in some huge fights, but he's grabbing the headlines for the wrong reasons. Ultimately, now
he needs to just go away, have a couple of holidays, sort yourself out, and then come back and have some big fights. Just stop with the nonsense.
100%. Well, thanks very much for hopping on, Jason. That's Tank versus Martin reaction done. We'll catch you next time.
Yes, man.